Hey man!
Watch out! It's a woodpecker from space!
So guys, I am trying to finish up the sculpture, and this is made out of water-based clay, or you can call it terracotta. It's a really good clay, and I don't see a lot of sculptors on YouTube working with terracotta, but I wanted to give you a little bit of why you should work more with terracotta, some of the pros and some of the cons of working with it. It's a really excellent medium, and hopefully this video is going to help your next decision as opposed to the oil-based clay. Water-based clay, there's a couple of things. You have to keep spraying it, and some people might not like that. You have to keep spraying it with water, but all you have to do is get a water bottle and spray it, and it'll keep moist. And that's how you control how soft the clay is. You don't want it to be so wet that like when you touch it, it sticks to your finger. Right now this is perfect. And there is a little bit more engineering when it comes to water-based clay, because you have to figure out that, okay, the arms extend out so past this platform, so that means that it's going to get drier. The arm is going to get drier because it's not attached to the torso, nothing supporting it. So that will get drier first before the major chunk of the torso will. There are ways to go about it. You could put just a chunk of clay here, that way it'll keep the clay being a little bit more consistent. But that's one thing that's a disadvantage to some people. There is another type of clay that I really like, and this is the clay that a lot of sculptors use on YouTube. And a lot of sculptors use it on making like a lot of comic book type of things, and it works really well. A lot of professional sculptors use it. This is oil-based clay. It doesn't really matter which one you get. You just want oil-based clay that doesn't have any sulfur. Sulfur, like, it gets in the way of modeling or molding it afterwards, because the thing is, with oil-based clay, you're forced to make a mold of your sculpture if you want to make it a permanent sculpture. And with water-based clay, you have an advantage of firing it, letting it dry, become semi-permanent, and then firing it in a kiln, and it will become extremely hard, extremely durable, and will last for centuries. There's many terracotta sculptures from thousands of years. The Chinese army, if you guys know about that, that's the terracotta army. That's an amazing amount of sculptures that are still intact. So this is a very, very durable medium. Another disadvantage of the water-based clay is that after you're done with your sculpture, usually around the middle of your sculpture, you have to make all of this hollow, because you can't keep it one solid piece of clay throughout. Because when you fire it in a kiln, it would explode if it would be solid. It's too much, and this could like develop cracks when you put it in the kiln. If you left some air bubbles in the clay when you were pushing the clay in, it could potentially break, crack, explode. So this, you have to really learn how to push the clay in hard. You have to be firm. You can't use an armature inside if you're going to fire it. Of course, you can make a mold of this one, and then that's not an issue. It's almost as you can, if you're really good, you can be almost like a virtuoso. The quality of the clay is excellent. And when you look at terracottas from old masters, you realize that this is not like a reproduction of it. The terracotta is the actual like sculptor that touched that clay. So when you think of that in those terms, this is the most direct way of sculpting. It's a lot messier. It gets your studio a whole lot dirtier, and there's particles of dirt and dust in the air. But when you like look at it that way, if you're looking at it from like a fine artist's perspective, terracotta is like one of the best mediums because it's the artist's most direct way of sculpting that you can see. And you see a lot of sculptures, terracottas from Bernini, Michelangelo, and when you look at them, usually they're like little studies for the stone sculptures or whatever they're doing, but you realize that that clay, that chunk of clay, that artist really touched. And so when it comes to expense, you can get a whole lot more water-based clay than you can oil-based clay. One bag of water-based clay, it comes in bags and sometimes boxes. It costs about $15, so maybe about $30 for one box of 50 pounds. 50 pounds in oil-based clay. So I bought the J-Mac clay, it was 40 pounds, it was like $140. And then you have to pay shipping on top of that. But water-based clay is usually sourced locally in most places. You can go to your backyard and dig out clay, and that would actually work for sculpting as well. The only downside is that you would have to remove all the dirt particles. You would have to like filter it. So oftentimes it doesn't really matter, but most water-based clay is like sourced locally. So this is called Virginia Red because I'm in the Virginia area. So it's very inexpensive. With this, if I don't like it, I can just throw it away. I can put it in the backyard and it'll just go back to its original form of just mud and dirt. So in a way, this is a much cheaper way to begin sculpting. Water-based clay is a little bit dirtier, but if you use it correctly, you don't have to get dirty. Now there is a cost associated with water-based clay for firing. So generally you need a kiln to fire one of these, but luckily there's a lot of ceramic places all over the place, which as I speak right now there's a shutdown, so there's nothing open, but generally it's cheap. The heavier it is, the more expensive they charge you to fire it. They usually go by the pound. And this is such a large sculpture, they probably would charge me like $50 to fire just because they have to use the entire kiln. But if you didn't want to use a kiln, you could actually dig a hole in your backyard and make your own like kiln. Just stuff like tons of firewood in there. I've thought about doing that, but it's just not worth it. And to fire one of these, you have to do it very slowly. It has to be an entire day to completely fire. So keep that in mind. It's an added cost, but the final product is kind of cool. It's a very flexible medium, and it's very inexpensive. A lot of people don't tell you is that when you put plastic on top of this and you go do whatever you want, you come back, and if there's like these little wood things that I'm using as supports, there's mold that develops here. Sometimes there's mold that develops near the base, so keep that in mind because it could be a potential risk. But I have worked in sculptures before, come back to the sculpture, and there's just like mold everywhere. But you just scrape it off and you continue. You can't leave it for very long periods. So if you're going to work on a piece for years and years, oil-based clay is much superior to this. But if you're the artist that wants to work on one piece and you're going to like go from the beginning to the end within a matter of weeks, this is a really good medium, and it's cheap. You can get it like just about anywhere. And it's really worth it. It's a beautiful medium. It's a really beautiful clay. And when you're working with this clay, you really feel it. The way you kind of push it in, there's a lot more fluidity. You can use bristle brushes to make details just by dipping in water. It's a really good flexible medium. I think the advantages of this actually outweigh the cons, but a lot of people do like oil-based clay. So that's pretty much what some of the advantages and the cons of working with water-based clay. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video.